I'm here today with Shehera Barnes. She is a devoted spiritual guide, healer, and priestess of the sacred rose lineage of Isis, Mother Mary, and Mary Magdalene. As the author of the Awakening the Goddess Within oracle cards, she channels the wisdom of these divine feminine archetypes to guide women on a profound journey of remembrance, helping them reclaim their sacred power, intuition, and sovereignty. Through her work, she bridges the mystical with the practical, offering powerful transmissions, rituals, and sacred teachings that illuminate the path of the modern priestess. With a lifetime of dedicated to service, prayer, and devotion, Shehera has cultivated a deep connection to the goddess and to the ancient mysteries. Her teachings blend channeled activations, sound healing, goddess archetypes, alchemical practices, and ancient Egyptian wisdom, all designed to heal the feminine nervous system, activate spiritual gifts, and restore harmony between the cosmic and the earthly realms. Drawing from initiatory lineages, she creates transformational spaces for women to heal generational wounds, embody their highest soul expression, and step into their divine mission with clarity and power. Shehera's work is a sanctuary for those who feel the sacred call to awaken, heal, and rise. Through immersive retreats, mentorship programs, and sacred ceremonies, she provides a space for deep healing and quantum expansion. Whether through her oracle deck, teachings, or guided transmissions, she invites women to reconnect with their inner temple, embrace the path of the divine remembrance, and step into their full radiance. Thank you for being here.
It's my joy and honor to be here with you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for having me.
you're welcome. And I feel like those words just really emanate like yeah, just your presence here. It's like this radiance, and you have all of your crystal tones, like alchemy bowls behind you, which are so powerful. Um, yeah, I'd love to dive in and just hear more of. I know you probably weren't always in this radiance. I'd love to hear about your journey of finding the priestess path, initiations that you've walked to be where you are now, wherever you want to start.
Oh my goodness. To be on this path is truly not only a blessing, but I feel one of the greatest gifts of my life to remember myself and reclaim my power. And in doing so, I really wanted to be able to share this with others, specifically women on the path, trying to heal, trying to find their voice, trying to find their purpose. And, mine began actually when I was young, when I was really young. My grandmother was a devout Muslim. She would pray 6 times a day, and she would bring me in her room and she would try to read the Quran to me. And of course, I didn't understand it, but I felt the resonance of the frequency of what she was doing. And I could see her presence, her aura, her radiance in that space as she prayed to the divine. And I knew that there was something happening that was special, that was holy, that was different. And her energy and her frequency was different than other people in my life and in my family. Even as a young kid, I was drawn magnetically to be with her. And I knew that there was something really special about her. Later on, she told me that she, came from a saint lineage, but I don't think you need to be a saint in order to pray and have a connection to the divine. But she really was a special person, and she put me on the path at a very young age of being able to see light, right? And of course, life will be life and it will take you where it needs to take you. And, I had a tough childhood being a child of a revolution in Iran and being displaced and having everything taken from us and moving around the world. And, um, had my own trauma and my own wounding and things that I had to heal as I was navigating life. But when it came time to decide what I wanted to do, right, as you graduate, high school, going to school, what did I want to do? And my earliest instinct that I can remember is I wanted to be of service. I wanted to help. I didn't know what service was at the time, but I just wanted to help others. And I recognized that what I was really important for me was to leave a legacy because the words that I was saying was if I could change one person's life with my light, my help, my service, I, I was elected a natural helper in high school. And so, it was just part of my being, that's who I was. And I really wanted to carry that. And so I went on to study psychology. So it was all about dissertation with my psychology degree, which means that I'd done all the work. And there was just something that just was not resonant. I wanted to study astropsychology when I was younger. My parents were like, no, 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 you go to real school. And so, there was something about the mystical that always drew me. I loved, the cosmology. It was part of who I was. And so I was doing astrology charts when I was really young, and that's really what I wanted to study. And so, being from a Persian family that really values education, I was put into school, and that's fine. I mean, of course, I got so much out of it. But it's interesting that I chose a healing path, even though I didn't really know what a healer was. And I wanted to be a psychologist to help others. And being in school, the path that the school had, which was to just really rely on a psychologist and have weekly visits and so on, just didn't resonate with me. And so I knew that there was something else. And so I took a pause, a sacred pause, and pursued the other, passion that I had, which was fashion. But and I was lucky. I landed right in fashion and had, a very successful career in fashion for a couple decades and moved up the ladder and became, VP of sales of a couple different companies. But in that space, I started to really understand that I wasn't living my purpose. I was getting sick. I was having heart palpitations. I was having anxiety all the time. I was being rushed to the hospitals, and I didn't really know what was wrong with me. And so that, finding myself and finding healing for myself, hair was, falling. I was so stressed out. I decided to pursue the path of healing myself. And so yoga, meditation, through yoga, I found sound healing, which was gong initially, and then later that led to bowls, and which have been my savior. Connection to source, really, truly, is all of the what I chose to embody was to find myself and to plug back in to the energy source that, ignites all of us. And so in that healing journey, I also realized that I was a teacher because whatever I was embodying, whatever I was healing, I was like, everybody needs to know about this. I need to share this with other people. Why don't people know that this exists? Why are people suffering? And so then I went on to just, really get my PhD once again in the wellness arts. And that is what was really resonant for me to, be in a space of really empowering others to be their own guru, be their own healer, ignite themselves, activate themselves. And that path obviously began about, 15, 16 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, of really, really devoting myself to understanding all the different healing modalities, energy healing, sound healing, yoga, meditation, and of course, through that, I began being called to also travel and see the world and really connect to the energetic grids and hotspots around the world because I knew that there was something else that I had to learn um, in my repertoire. And it wasn't just sitting in front of a computer or sitting in class. It was literally the world classroom that was waiting for me and seeing the world and being activated by these sacred spots, these leylands, these very powerful, special places around the world, and they were calling my heart. And I was like, okay, well, how do I go? I didn't have a lot of money at the time. How do I make this happen? And so creating retreats where I traveled with my soul family and traveled the world to these sacred spaces as pilgrimages is what was, channeled or called. And I remember one of my first retreats was in Ojai. It was just really local. But the transformation that I saw of being in that land, in that space, which is a vortex in itself, and combining yoga, meditation, intention, and the ritual and the ceremony of being together in sacred sisterhood and brotherhood, the community, the connection that we built, the transformation that occurred from those was like, oh, I found my life's work. I found my people and I found my life's work. And, I have Sagittarius rising. And so I'm a traveler by nature. I love to learn about new cultures, new people, new food, connection to, different languages. I speak multiple languages myself. And I am forever a student, forever wanting to learn about this life and this world. And what better way to do it than, being on this path and traveling the world and really experiencing the world. And I would say that the priestess path came really organically for me. I was doing the work already. Everything that I was teaching, everything that I was sharing was a connection back to the divine. When I look back 15 years ago, I was teaching oneness. I was teaching how to bring all the fragmented parts of yourself back home and have that deep union back to source. So the Kundalini yoga that I teach that's the essence of it. It's oneness. All yoga is that we've, in the Western culture have kind of desecrated it a little bit, but the meaning of yoga is union. And excuse me. And when we are in that union with the divine, we feel the fullness of ourselves, our powers, our magnificence, our radiance, our gifts. Everything gets unlocked and life becomes easy, right? And so, these are tools of transformation that I teach, but the essence of everything, including my retreats and pilgrimages, is to come back into oneness, into union with yourself, with the divine, and understand that we are part of the creator, therefore the creator, and there is no separation. And in that space, when you have moments of that clarity, when you have moments of that awareness, then it is cumulative, right? And it builds. And so then it translates to your daily life. And you no longer feel small. You no longer feel contained in this little body, right? And you feel your connection with the infinite consciousness, with all that is. And there is a sense of empowerment that comes through that, right? And so everything that I create, all of my containers, all of my retreats, all of my teachings is just that. So it started, you know, maybe a couple decades ago, but just really through that understanding that of healing myself. And then, through the teachings. And then I would say maybe one of the first goddesses now that I can remember that I was the most connected to was Mother Mary. Mother Mary was, I just looked at her and I felt the pure unconditional source love that she carried. And I was inspired. I was inspired by her devotion. I was inspired by her purity, by her innocence, by her, just the light that she was. And so I mean, I still have my little card of her that I've been carrying for like 20 years in my wallet. And of course, Yeshua, one of my greatest teachers, and Mary Magdalene came a little bit later. I didn't have as much of a connection with her until probably a decade ago. But I would say Yeshua and Mother Mary were like my first teachers, like um, in the mysteries and in the work that we do. And shortly after, Goddess Isis came through, and that came through my healings. As I was doing healings on people, I felt the presence of a very powerful woman in the room. every time that I would give a healing to specifically a woman that was going through something where she had lost her power, where she needed to really, step back into alignment with who she was, claim her, fragmented pieces back and bring him back into wholeness. This beautiful goddess would form like right in front of my eyes, wings and all. And, later, like maybe like, I don't know, a short time later, I saw an image of her. And I was like, oh my goodness, that is the woman, that is the goddess that came to me in my healings. And, putting the pieces because that's what happens in this path. You were so led, you're so guided, you're so loved, and I just invited her in my life. And I got this enormous statue of her in my healing room. And she's still here. I don't know if you can see her very well or not, but I'm kind of in front of her. And even when I sit here, I feel her presence and her wings behind me, just really holding me and guiding me and speaking through me and channeling through me. And the work that I do is largely, especially the healing part, she comes through. Of course, Mother Mary is always present, but she comes through so strongly for the women in my life. And I would say the most beautiful story that I have about her, besides just her being such a guide and an ally and a teacher, and I just, surrender. When she comes in the room, I surrender and I let her do the work. But one of the most profound experiences that I had with her was when my father died, about 4 or 5 years ago. And I had already been working with her for a lot of years. She was a part of who I was, my greatest teacher, my guide, and just, the one that I prayed to, the one that I asked guidance from. And I, had to go and basically be at my father's side and put together the funeral and all that I had to do, which just seemed so impossible in the moment. I was so close to my father. I loved him more than anyone on this planet. Like we were like this. We've had past lives together. He was my favorite person. And just the loss was so grave for me. And that I didn't even know how to handle the grief and the emotions. And yet I had to put together a funeral and I had to, give a eulogy and I had to make it beautiful. And I had to really share his legacy with people and do it in in a profound way. And I just didn't know if I had it in me. And I was staying in my uncle's house because I just had traveled there. And my uncle, my father's brother, um, he collects things, like from places that he goes and visits, like cups and cars and statues and things like that. And I walked into his office where I was going to be writing my father's eulogy and putting together the funeral. And I was on the computer and I turned around and I saw this beautiful statue of Goddess Isis. Small, but nevertheless, it was Goddess Isis. And I asked my uncle, I'm like, how do you know Goddess Isis? This is so interesting. This 80-some-year-old man, like has a statue of Goddess Isis. And he said, I got it 30 years ago when I was in Egypt as just a souvenir. And I thought it was really beautiful. And I brought it home. And it still had the tag. He's the type of person that still has tags on things. It's pristine, 30 years. And I was like, oh my goodness, she's so beautiful. And I shared a little bit about my story with her and just like how much she's impacted my life and who she is, and really just a history of who she was and the role that she played in my life. And he was fascinated, of course. And I make it through these 7 days where I had to do all of these things for my father. And it went by seamlessly, beautifully, and I honored his life the way that he really truly deserved it. And as I was leaving, my uncle handed me a box and he said, this wants to come home with you. And I knew what it was. And I just had tears
Yeah, it makes
rolling
me.
down my face. And my heart was just like, I was like, no, you've had this for 30 years. I have a giant statue of her. Keep her. He's like, no, she wants to come home with you. And I just like, my heart was just burst wide open, and I carried her with so much reverence on the plane. She came and sat in my lap. I was like, I'm not checking this in. It's just so precious and so, fragile. And I came home and I opened the box and I'm the type of person that, like you take off tags, but I wanted to read what it said. And all the while, I had known Goddess Isis as the goddess of magic, birth, and, healing and fertility and all the beautiful things, light, right? And you know what it said? Goddess of funeral rites, death,
Mm.
and resurrection.
Mhm.
And that is her shadow aspect. That's Nephthys, really, is really who it is. That's her twin sister. But they're one. It's
Mhm.
the polarity of the two. They're one. And in that moment, I knew. I knew I had to live a life of devotion to the goddess. I knew she was my guide. I knew she had me through the light. She had me through the dark. She helped me through it all. And that we're not alone in this life. When we choose to connect, when we choose to bring these forces into our lives that are here to really help us navigate this human journey, we think we're alone. We think that, we're supposed to do this on our own. But the angelic realm, the goddess realm, the gods, divine source,
Mhm.
which, the gods and goddesses, as we all know, they're just aspects of the one. And they're, in fragmented pieces in order for us to connect to different aspects of them and bring them all into wholeness within ourselves. But she's my main guide. She's my main teacher. She's my main mentor in this life. And she holds me. She holds me through it all. And very shortly after his passing and this deeper connection that I had cultivated with her, there was this deep call to go to Egypt. And she called me home. And, one of my teachers had told me, when spirit speaks to you, you need to listen. It's not your mind. Spirit speaks. Don't question it. Just follow the breadcrumbs and you will be led. And, she told me the story of her, how spirit told her to like basically dig like this 10-foot, like, excavation in her backyard. And she didn't know why. And later to find out that it was a leyland right in her backyard. And she built like a community space and a temple right there. So, we are always led and we just need to listen and follow an aligned action. And so the call was, it's time for you to come home. It's time for you to lead your pilgrimages here and bring people with you here. And it seemed like a colossal task. I was like, I don't know anyone in Egypt. How do I do this? And it was like, you will be held. You're always held. You're the daughter of Atlantis. You're coming back home, and you will be held every step of the way. Trust. And I did. And everything came together effortlessly. And I prayed and I asked for guidance every step of the way. And I had my first retreat, and it was magnificent. And it was really deep healing for me, first and foremost. It was a remembrance, a deep call and a remembrance. And then after that first retreat, how I needed to lead that retreat was channeled. It was a shamanic journey of dying to our old self, giving our hearts, surrendering our hearts to the mysteries, to Anubis, to Nephthys, to Nekbet, Mother Mut, to Ma'at, to work on our hearts from the very beginning of the journey and put the potions and the elixirs and all that our hearts needed along the journey through all the temple activations for 11 days until we arrive at on 11/11 at the pause of the Sphinx and later that evening at the Great Pyramid for 2 private ceremonies, downloading the Akashics at the base of the pause and in the Great Pyramid in the sarcophagus receiving our alchemical hearts back and becoming that unified human being that the world so desperately needs right now by
Mm.
Amun Ra and being blessed on our human journey. My oracle card deck was channeled at the base of the paws of the Sphinx. My mystery school was channeled in that journey. And the path of the devotion to the gods and the goddesses, but specifically the goddesses, specifically for women wanting to find themselves, wanting to heal themselves, wanting to navigate this human journey, wearing all the different hats that we do, all that we have to embody, and having tools and resources that they can heal themselves, bring their nervous system into balance, remember their greatness, bring all the different facets of themselves back home, all the different fragmented parts of ourselves where we had to fit into these beautiful, neat little boxes, right? And just embrace their wildness, embrace their grace, embrace their beauty, their radiance, all the different colors that we are, and come back into wholeness and heal. And so I was really long-winded. That was one sentence.
Yeah. Yeah, we covered a lot of territory. I have so many follow-up questions I could ask,
Please do.
but
I can go on, as you can tell. This is my joy, my
yeah.
passion. I live for the mysteries. I live
Mm.
for the teachings.
Did you have past life remembrances in that journey back? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I remember um, being in the temples, and I had my teacher, mentor, that blessed and honored me to actually come on my retreat, which was like this, it was just this last year. So this is
Mm.
one of them, one of the remembrances this last year. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is my mentor. She's coming on my retreat. I'm just so honored. And I hope I do a good job.
Yeah.
And I asked her to, partake in the ceremonies with me because,
Yeah.
she's the ultimate goddess herself, high priestess, the grand dame. She's been doing this work for decades and really ignited me. And this beautiful woman named Taj, and we were in one of the temples together, and it was actually the Isis temple. And I was playing the bowls, and I asked her to use her tuning forks to really activate our guests as they walk through the threshold at the gates of the original Isis temple, not the new one that they have built, but the original where, you just, kind of have to step out and into water and you have the beautiful gates and the original codes are there, right? And so at that gate, at that original threshold, we were standing and I was playing the bowls and toning, and she was, doing her tuning forks. And I just had this vivid image that her and I had done that previously in the temples of
Yeah.
Isis. We were priestesses of Isis. We lived in devotion. We had done that work together. And she had come into my life to help me remember. She had the crystal bowls way before anybody had the crystal bowls. So that was kind of one of my first activations, especially crystal tones bowls, was through the bowls. I remember seeing her, it was like 15 years ago when I met her and I went to Kauai. And she had a long list of things to do. You could do past life regression, which I did. You could do healing, you could do this and that, or you can have a sound healing. And I had no idea what that was. But I just looked at all these bowls all around her and I was like, what are those? And she's like, that's the sound healing. Do you want to do a sound healing session? And I was like, yes. Whatever these magical things are, yes. And so within the first chime, I just remember like tears flowing down and just crying crocodile tears. And I didn't know where they were coming from, but there was this huge remembrance. And so, I really had my first true activation and remembrance of the path through her. I was already, working with clients. I was already, in my yoga teacher training and all the things that I was doing, but she really helped to activate me and really take it up a notch for me, like a new octave. And so, obviously we've stayed in touch for all these years, and she came to my retreat last year, and I had a powerful, powerful memory of us together. And then in the King's Chamber, we did the same thing as people were in the sarcophagus. And I was, calling in Amun Ra to bring their alchemical hearts back into their physical bodies. She was doing the tuning forks, and I was chanting and, just leading them through the ceremony. And it was just like this spiral of like memory of us, doing this exact work, this priestess work to help elevate souls, help them remember their true essence, their consciousness, and igniting beings back into their divinity. And so that was huge. And then another really profound, you know, memory that it's not necessarily like a past life memory, although I have many of those, but I think that this is really pertinent and important to share because when I was there last time, actually, it was last time, I went to Siwa. And with my guide, we were at the Temple of the Oracle, and he was talking about how, Cambyses, the great conqueror, the Persian conqueror, had infiltrated Egypt and basically um, desecrated all the temples, disallowed, the worship of the gods and goddesses, and, just defaced all the temples. And in that moment at the Temple of the Oracle, the greatest understanding of why I was called came through. And I just had chills and gratitude that I was able to do this work because the message was that, and this is why you're here. You're here to erase the karma that your ancestors have created in the space and bring people to help them remember their divinity once again. What has been erased can be illuminated by you once again. So that's the work, that's the
Mhm.
work that I'm called to do. And it made sense. It made so much sense. I knew deep in my heart, why I was doing it. It was to be of service, but hearing that little part that I was there to just really shift the karma that my ancestors had created for myself and for my family line, and to help re-illuminate the path to the divine and to share these mysteries in a way that is accessible to people, in a way that is transformative to people, in a way that they can walk out and apply these teachings, these understandings, these transformations into our own lives. And so, yeah, I feel like my little girl self would be so happy because I am changing and transforming so many lives. And my goal was just to transform one person's life.
That's amazing. I remember you telling that story to me on our first phone call we had. And just, I was going to ask you about it today. It was, yeah, that really stayed with me about clearing the karma of your ancestors and bringing back the sacred feminine, the goddess, restoring balance and her place in all of it. It's
It's so
so,
needed.
yeah, it's so beautiful and meaningful to connect in with life purpose and mission like that. It can just really change everything, this legacy you get to live.
So lucky and so blessed. Really do. I really, really, truly do. I feel like I finally, with this goddess work and the sacred feminine work that I'm doing, I feel at home. I've always been a healer ever since I was young. I've always had that natural instinct to help. But this additional piece that has come into my life with, you know, and I've always been connected to the angelic realm, always. I saw beings of light. I had imaginary friends, all the things, but then at some point you close it because it's not appropriate, or your parents tell you you're crazy and stop that, and play with kids and
Mhm.
and so this opening myself up back to the mysteries once again, and understanding that really this 1% that we cling to is not the whole story. There's this 99% in the void that we have the opportunity to explore in this life. And that's really where the true magic begins. And it's also about being okay to face your shadows. It's also about being okay to do the deep healing work that it requires in order to navigate that realm, right? Being okay, being in the dark and the unknown, surrendering, trust, faith, all those things that are part of the sacred feminine work and mysteries, right? And we've been taught to, especially as women, to be in control, be, wear, our masculine hats at all times to navigate everything, have structure, have organizations, work, to come home, take care of children, take care of, cook, do all these things. But we forget that we're the oracle. We are here to lead the way for our beloveds, for our children, for our communities, right? And when we have time to go within, when we have time to go deep into the mysteries and be guided and be led, is really when we are fully in our true sovereignty and our true power and our true gifts. We are the oracles. That is our job. And so, you know, we can do it all. We absolutely can. It's just creating these spaces where we actually do go in and ignite that. And I feel the consciousness is changing. I think also our nervous system is changing as humanity, right? We're adapting. We're so adaptable as human beings. And so, but being able to have these moments of dropping in and these connections to God, to the divine, to our guides, to, you know, the divine feminine mysteries is really what helps women, in my experience, to come back into wholeness and remembrance and step into their true powers. So it's been a gift for me, first and foremost, to step into it myself. And then the teacher in me wants to teach
Of
it
course.
and share it, because
Yeah.
it's not ours to keep.
Yes. Beautiful. I wanted to share just as you're sharing about Egypt, my own journey there is coming back to me.
I'd love to hear.
And it's so interesting because it was 7 years ago, but it feels like yesterday. Didn't um, and on that trip, so I had been drawn to crystal bowls before that trip, and I had a couple of the simple white frosted ones. And on that trip, one of the sisters in my group, I went on a retreat with like a goddess group. There were 22 of us. And I mean, even the fact that I got to go was a miracle because their retreat was full. I had seen my friend posting about it. And when I finished my priestess initiation with my mentor, Marin, in our closing weekend, we had a sound healing, or maybe it was a breath work. But I saw myself in the pyramids. And I texted my friend who was leading this retreat, and do you happen to have any spaces left? Like I kind of been eyeing it, but she's like, no, sorry, all the spaces are full. And I was like, okay, another time, let it go. Um, and the way it came together was I had I had a lease on my car. It was the end of the lease, and I had to go to the dealership to either get a new lease or buy the car or give it back. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So I'm in the car and I start calling in my angels. And I'm inviting my guides just to be with me as I'm like going into this, the car dealership. It's not always an easy experience. And as I'm calling in the angels, the phone starts ringing. And it's Achintya, my friend that I went on the journey with. And she said, Sister, we have a space for you.
So
she
divine.
she's like, another person needed to drop out. And she said, um, we're leaving. I think they were leaving in like 5 days. It was like really
Had things like that
fast.
happen at my retreats. You're just
And
meant to be there. You're just meant to be there.
yeah.
And spirit paves the way.
I know. And just the miracles that came into place. It was a 2 week journey. So I had to reschedule clients. I like, how am I going to pay for this? Like a Christmas check came in from my grandmother that like covered the cost. It was just like, whoa. I had to get the flights, like everything. I had to change a lot around, but it just like the doors opened and it went. But I met this amazing friend there. Her name is Deva, and she distributes the crystal tones bowls. And she lives in Big Sur. And she brought some of the bowls with her. So there we were in the temples, in the Great Pyramid,
Yes.
doing ceremony. She's using the bowls. And,
It's so
of
powerful in the
course,
Great Chamber. Oh my God. It's like the sound. Yeah, I bring my bowls too, and we sing in tone, and it's just, oh my goodness, it's out of this world. It's out of this
yeah.
world, so I can only imagine. Go on.
Yeah, so that was my introduction to those bowls. And we, of course, were all just drawn to them and like, wow, those are some really powerful bowls. And again, it was like, where can the money come to start collecting these, all of this? So I came back from Egypt and I invited my friend to lead a sound healing with me up where I live in Northern California. She's in Big Sur, I'm in Petaluma. And she came up and I, invited lots of people and she brought maybe like 45 of these bowls. Like it was incredible to build the room with them. And and afterwards I was telling her about an offering I had for women. And it was kind of like business development and priestess work. And it was a new online offering that I was sharing. And at the end of her weekend staying with me, she said, um, I want to take your program. Would you consider an exchange with the bulls?
I just got chills.
And my first three bowls came through that.
Such a
And
beautiful sacred exchange.
yes, it was just miracle, miracle upon miracle. And so over time, I was able to collect a few
Yeah.
more. And
They call in their brothers and
yes,
sisters, and yeah, they change your frequency. They attract, abundance and
yes,
opportunities. And yeah, they're master teachers in their own. They're life conscious beings, and you get to play them, and you get to be in their resonance, and they get to upgrade you and just take you up another octave. Yes, yes, please, more, please.
yes. Yeah. So just
So
magic when we
beautiful.
open to spirit like that and what we're meant to do and be. And gosh, that trip, it changed the course of my life. Like, not only were there the remembrances, like Egypt so fully in my soul being, and the familiarity and all of that, but I feel like something was turned on, like with my abilities, just going back there, like more psychic abilities, intuition, the codes, like they
Codes.
activate.
It's so funny. People make fun of the codes. My husband, like, you get the codes. And I'm like, the codes are simply being in the presence of a sacred space that turns on your remembrance of who you are. It's
Yeah.
it's not nothing fancy. It really isn't. I mean, to really break it down, you step into a sacred spot or into a sacred vortex, and there is a remembrance that activates within you, right? We've been here many lifetimes. And you're remembering your gifts from previous lifetimes. You're remembering your powers. You're remembering your divinity. There's something that is lit up in you. When you're inside these temples are the bodies of the Netarus. You're inside the heart of Goddess Hathor, are you kidding me right now? Like, how do you not, come into ecstatic bliss and joy and dance and celebration of life? You're inside the heart of Goddess Isis. How does your heart not burst open into just unconditional love? You feel it is palpable. Every single temple, every single space that you go into is an activation of something really sacred within you. In Khnum's temple, for example, the potter, the great potter, he brings all the missing parts of you, your physical humanity, it shapes it into form. Horus gives you your eyesight. Set
Mhm.
allows you to see your shadow, right? Allows you to see the polarity come into balance with those two in Kamombo. I mean, it's the whole journey is just magic. It's a full transformation of being a regular human being to now all of a sudden understanding the path of, our existence, coming from having the veil put on us, forgetting all of our divinity. And as you come out of that trip, the veil is ripped open and you see it all.
So
It's a full
incredible.
remembrance.
Yes.
So beautiful.
Um,
I was so glad that you got that opportunity in such a magical way. And it feels so destined that you were meant to be there at that particular time in your life. And those that are meant to be there will find a way, and spirit finds a way for them as well, you know?
yeah.
And so it's just having the intention and having that call and listening to the call, listening to the breadcrumbs.
Yes. I wonder if you can share a little bit just about resurrection, and even if you want to share a little bit about Isis's story within that, or um, yeah, I just know some people listening, it might be very new to her
Yeah.
energy and
Yeah. Well, we have an opportunity to resurrect in every moment. You don't have to go to Egypt to resurrect. It's, we have all of these beautiful portals, new moons, full moons, eclipses, equinoxes. All of these are portals for us to be able to die to our old selves and rebirth anew. And that's an aspect of resurrection. Your cells churn every so often, your blood changes every so often. These are all aspects of resurrection. We never stay the same. The only constant in life is change, right? And so we're constantly changing and growing and evolving. It's, the resurrection that we speak of in terms of, goddess Isis, as it pertains to her journey with Osiris, can be metaphorically looked at as the resurrection of, dying to your humanity and resurrecting to your divinity, right? In a sense, as you go through the journey, the spiritual journey of coming into fullness and understanding of who you truly are, not being stuck in this vessel, not being attached to this, skin, right? And understanding that you're so much more than that. But her journey, obviously, with Osiris, and such a long and winded story, but, to make it short, as he was um, chopped up into pieces by Set, his brother, she took her grief and through her grief, alchemized it into magic, gathered all the missing parts of him back into wholeness, except for his lingam that was still missing. But as she swirled around him in her grief, in her tears, in her devotion, in her love, she was able to take his sacred seeds, impregnate herself with Horus, right? And in raising Horus to become who he was, later on, Horus the Elder is a resurrected aspect of Osiris. So, in a way, she resurrected her husband through her child, right? Created magic out of grief and the transmutation of her grief into a beautiful gift of life, and took his seeds and resurrected him in essence, and brought him back as Horus, and Horus later evolved Horus the Elder is supposed to be Osiris resurrected. But he lives on. Even as Osiris, he lives on because he's the god of the Duat. He's the god of the underworld, right? He
Mhm.
guides us through the mysteries and through the dark, through the passageway, right? And so he's the guardian of that threshold, and he's always with us. And he reminds us that this life is not all there is. You know, in the Egyptian mysteries, they actually, this life, they didn't value as much as the afterlife. They lived this life in order to have entrance to the Duat, in order to live in cosmic laws of Ma'at, right? The
Mm,
22 principles of Ma'at. That's how they live so that they can have access to the Duat, to the underworld, and then be able to go back to light, right? The
right.
spiral. And so, you know, to live in the cosmic law of Ma'at is to have a heart that's as light as a feather. That means that you're not holding grief, you're not holding judgment, you're not holding anger, you're not holding resentment. Your heart is light, and you have access to go into the duat and the passageway to find yourself back into the light. Right. And so even in death, you never die because your soul is eternal. And it's this, cycle of life. And if you choose to come back, you can. There's bodhisattvas that come back to be of service to humanity, right? But if your heart is as light as a feather, you've done the work, you have an opportunity to become enlightened, you can go back and hang out in the light, right? Or you can, come back and do the cycle again, right? And they say that we have what, millions of lifetimes here on Earth in order to go through that cycle, even though it's like a blink of an eye, it feels like an eternity sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's not what this is. This is just an aspect of who you are having an experience in this realm. There's multiple other dimensions that you exist in. There's multiple other lives that you're leading, right? And this is just one aspect of that. And the larger part of who you are is part of that infinite consciousness. And this very small part of who you are is in this vessel. So when this vessel dies, so what? You live in all these other places, in all these other timelines. You are eternal. Your soul is eternal. Your consciousness is eternal.
Amazing. I have one more story I want to share with
Yes,
you
yes,
about
please.
Egypt. You mentioned that Horus is the third eye, like opening your intuitive knowing. Um, so I was married to my husband in 2018, in September, and I went on this Egypt pilgrimage in December, just a couple months after. And there was a bit of a journey for me, with my husband because I knew I always wanted to have a child, and my husband, um, wasn't sure. He kind of felt like I don't know if I want that in this life. And I really sat with it, and I felt clear that this is my partner. This is my beloved. I choose him. And even if I have to give up that dream, that it would be okay. And I look to many women in my life, mentors who chose not to have children and have beautiful, amazing lives. And I knew that I would have that for myself as well. And really trusted that in our, commitment and our ceremony. And, that willingness to let go. And I was in the Horus Temple, and there's a statue there, of the Horus. I believe it's the head of the bird. Maybe it's like
Yes, I know
the body
exactly
of the
which one.
man. Really powerful
Really
statue.
powerful.
I sat with it for a while, just
The one that's always guarded and
yes.
can't be, yes, it's
And I
magic.
like
Yes.
started asking questions
Oh, I
to
so
him. And I asked about my dreams of having a child. And he said what I heard was 2022. Like she's coming, I didn't know if it was a boy or
still
girl,
somewhere.
but I've actually never shared that. But my daughter was born in March 2022.
Wow.
And so that was 4 years away at that point. And didn't know how or what would happen, what would transpire in those years. But um, yeah, it came to be. So
So beautiful, so meaningful. That's a powerful statue. I have to, when I go back this time, I have to sit with it. I didn't
yes.
think of it as an oracle, but I could feel the resonance of it, and it's
Yeah.
guarded for a reason because there is magic there. I
Yeah.
could feel it. And I was like, and my guide like let me like touch it. And I was like, no.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
So tell us, are you leading Egypt pilgrimages? When are the next ones? What's
Yes,
happening
of
in your
course,
business?
of course. This is, one of my greatest and deepest containers. I feel like there's so much magic that happens in this container. And so I'm going back again this November, and there's a few spots available for those who are deeply called and feel a resonance with all that we've shared. Egypt calls you. Egypt chooses you. And so, yeah, there's a few spots available, and I would love to walk the sacred path with those who are called. And it's for the 11:11 portal, but we start in Aswan on 11/2 with our ceremony and opening rituals, and we walk the path, the initiate's path, for 11 days until we come into the Great Pyramid and, of course, the Sphinx on 11/11 and two private ceremonies. I have them rented for a couple hours each, where we get to deeply, sit with each of these Netarus in their own right and receive the initiations and receive the blessings and the activations that we're calling in. But yeah, it's a beautiful journey, all that we've just already shared here, of a shamangelic journey is what I call it, of dying into your old self, living, birthing anew, and resurrecting into your divinity throughout the journey. And it is also temple study, for those who really want to learn a little bit more about the Egyptian mysteries. The way that I've curated it, you're not just going to sacred sites and just seeing and coming back home, and it's a deep it's a deep container where you get to learn about each god and goddess, about each temple, their significance, how you can integrate them into your life, temple codes, mantras. I have a beautiful workbook that I've created over the years. It's about 50 pages long of deep, and wisdom and information from these spaces and temples that we're going to be visiting, as well as how to just pay reverence to the Netaru, how to work with them, and yeah, and there's sound healing through every temple, toning, yoga, meditation. I teach Kundalini and Kemetic yoga. And Kemetic yoga is obviously, as you know, is, Egyptian lineage, the first yoga ever created, but really temple poses to help you really connect to where you're at, but also prayer and motion, right? And the Kundalini yoga is so powerful, meditations in each temple, ceremonies along the way. So if you love to experience Egypt ceremonially, come with me. I would love to be part of your path and journey
Mm,
of remembrance, really.
yeah. Beautiful. And we'll include links so anyone listening can find
Absolutely.
that. And
Yeah. Thank you so much. It
yeah,
was a joy to connect.
so nice to hear your story. Do you have any closing words or just anything you want to leave people with that might be listening? And then I'll close with a short prayer.
Oh, that's so beautiful. You know, um, one of the greatest lessons that I learned in life was we are not alone on this path. And that was part of my journey and what really activated for me to help myself. And we need to call our guides to be with us, to be on this human journey with us, to hold us. And the guides come in many forms. It's, the angelic realm. light beings, it's gods and goddesses, it's the mysteries, it's the stars and the sun and the moon, it's so many things, right? But it also comes alive. They come alive in form of places and sacred vortexes around the world where we are held in remembrance. So um, thank you. Thank you for walking this path with me, for remembering, for all of you guys that are doing the work and in remembrance and coming back into wholeness, because that is really what this world needs. This world is hungry for your light. So thank you. Thank you for those that are called to this path. And we're all here holding you.
Yes. So let's just close our eyes for a moment and just bring that into our heart space. And for those people listening, remembering that you hold this light. It's needed. It's our time. We're being called forth to restore balance on this planet, to share our gifts, our essence, our frequency, to touch the lives of the people around us, to love deeply, to feel our emotions, to just call forth the highest version of ourselves. Just to bring my hands together with so much gratitude for Shehera sharing her wisdom with us today. Thank you and blessed be.
Blessed be. Thank you so much. It was a joy.